Hi, I'm Dakota, and welcome to a video that is sort of pointing out the behavior of Thomas Sanders, and it isn't good. It is something that we as fanders, because I've been a Thomas Sanders fan myself ever since his first Sanders Says video dropped, but we as fanders should not be letting Thomas sort of cultivate, and we need to address it critically, and we need to be more aware of these things, because I was not originally aware of these things. And it's been about a year, actually, since all of this first happened, but I'm addressing it now, and I'm putting it in a video. I want a record of it. So that's what this video basically is. And we're going to start with Bree Grace. If you don't know who Bree Grace is, she is an artist and creator that has been working with Thomas since about 2018, and she has been a huge contributor of role slang with Roman, and there's been a lot of issues with that. She was laid off. This is a drama that is from about a year ago, but I'm bringing it up now because I feel like it's good groundwork. So I have a compilation of tweets and a Tumblr post that explains this content much better than I could. And so I'm going to be presenting that to you all today, and I will be reading it off. But understand, I will, of course, credit the people that actually put all of this together. This is me just laying the groundwork of what they started. So let's go ahead and get into that. So up on the screen, I have a Tumblr post by T4T Apex Eclipse, where I'm just going to read it. And they say, let's go into detail about what's going on with Thomas Sanders and Bree Grace, because I refuse to let him and the community sweep this under the rug. And underneath are bullet points. And the first one starts with Thomas severely underpaying Bree Grace for her work on Role Slang with Roman. Thomas then laid Bree off after creating a work environment that was bad enough to make her not want to return. There is a crossed off point, where it's like Thomas made a post announcing, quote unquote, that Role Slang with Roman would be on an indefinite hiatus, quote unquote, but it was only available on his Patreon. I'm not a Patreon, so I can't link the post or a screenshot, but if I find a screenshot, I will edit it into this post. And then the one underneath of that amends the above point. I had seen many people saying there was a Patreon post that touched on the subject of Bree being laid off and Role Slang with Roman taking hiatus, but in actuality, according to a patron, Thomas mentioned the matter in a Patreon live stream, not a full-blown post. I apologize for the misinformation. Just days later, Thomas makes a tweet about his merch sale, and most of it, if not all, his current merch was designed by Bree, who will not be seeing a penny in royalties. And this is apparently a regular thing with Thomas. Finally, an entire week after the Patreon announcement, quote unquote, and Bree being laid off, Thomas says this in a YouTube community page, among other things, but I'm focusing on this, which then we have a screenshot from his YouTube community post, and it says, Role Slang with Roman is a series I am super passionate about, and the story/world is largely the product of the talented Bree Grace. Her storytelling and character creations make the series so much of what it is. Bree is currently not a part of our team, but our goal is to get a place where we can contract Bree in order to let her focus her talents on writing the next installments of this amazing story she has brought to us. Additionally, we'll need to decide other elements of the production to make sure it's all feasible for us going forward. In the meantime, the series will be on an indefinite hold. We'll want to bulk shoot this whenever we begin working on it again. And I want to wait until more Sanderside's progress has been made before we return to it. And then you'll see here I have a screenshot of a Twitter post from Noiselux, which is Bree's Twitter, and it says, from the Thomas Sanders YouTube post, the part in regards to Role Slang with Roman, more specifically, I was laid off. So there you have it, there's that, and then we continue the post with T4T Apex Eclipse, where underneath they say, and Bree had to clarify that she was laid off from that YouTube community post. And then they say, I want to point out the phrase, Bree is currently not a part of our team. and how Thomas fails to acknowledge that he is responsible for that. He laid her off, and like a cowardly snake, he's hiding behind a vague corporate speak because he doesn't want to admit the truth. Unfortunately for him, the truth is out there. I know this sounds really serious and dramatic, and y'all probably not even taking me seriously, and you have your pitchforks at the ready. But guess what? I couldn't care less. I mean, this is serious, which is why I'm taking it seriously. But at the end of the day, I'm just informing the community of what I know. What you do with that information is up to you. I'm not canceling Thomas or trying to make a witch hunt. I'm so sick of everyone pretending Thomas is a perfect, harmless little angel who can do no wrong. Because guess what? He has done wrong. He's done wrong by Bree, but everyone is sucking up to him that they don't seem to care that Bree is suffering because of him. And this isn't the first time he's done wrong by an artist, either. Let's never forget the Mad Libs incident, which if you don't know what the Mad Libs incident is, it's Thomas got a bunch of animators to help do a video of his, but there was a lot of large miscommunication between the artists and Thomas's crew, and it was kind of a big mess. The artists did end up getting paid what they were promised. However, for a moment, it seemed like they weren't going to be paid, and it was just a huge mess. But that's the Mad Libs incident. Anyways, to continue. To summarize, Thomas doesn't make it a habit of properly compensating his artists he hires. He makes their experience a living hell, and then he lies through his teeth about it. Like I said, do with this information what you will, but I don't know how Thomas sleeps at night. Hope everyone has a nice weekend, except for Thomas, to be honest. And that's the end of the post. So you can assume now why I'm making this video at all, right? Like, all of that is very much problematic. And I can't believe that Thomas did that. Like, I can believe it because he is human. He is going to make mistakes like this. And everyone is flawed, unfortunately. And Thomas is also flawed. But you would think that, like, you would at least have the common sense, especially as such a large creator, not to do something like this, right? Like, I feel like paying your people decent amounts, not overworking them, like making a good environment, you'd think. And you'd also think at the very, very bare minimum, even if you didn't do that other stuff, even though you should, but even if you didn't do that other stuff, especially as someone like Thomas Sanders, you would at the very least be honest, transparent about your work was actually going on. Like, that's the reason I feel like a lot of people love Thomas Sanders. Like, a lot of reasons why people love his videos and because they love seeing, like me personally, I love seeing the behind the scenes. I love seeing Thomas being friends with his friends outside of just the content they create. I love getting to know, and what I thought truly was a good working environment with a lot of people. And I thought that, but it's a shame. That it truly is a shame, and I can't believe Thomas would do that to his own coworkers and friends, Anyways, we're gonna move on, and we're gonna start talking about some tweets. The tweets from Bree's Twitter to back up the things made in that post by T4T Apex Eclipse. Real quick, I should say that all of the Twitter screenshots you have seen and will see come from Complaint Central, aka Casey Complains. That's where all of them come from. So, with that, now you know, with that out of the way, let's get into the tweets. So, the first one belongs to the first bullet point, obviously, and it's about her mention of being underpaid. This is from Bree's Grace's Twitter that says Bree Grace. That's the handle. So it says, imagine asking one person for a feature-length animated film on a budget of 1 month of rent. And she has a GIF attached to it, and the GIF itself is of the wife from Emperor's New Groove. So the next one is from the Noise Lux handle, and it says, that sure was phrased in a way, ... I'm not about breadcrumbing. This series is on an indefinite hiatus because I was laid off. I don't know if I want to come back to work on it yet because of the entire experience. And that revolves about Bree getting laid off with role slang with Roman. And then the next tweet we have is about the merch of her art, I should emphasize, and it says, Weird to see my merch up for sale when I haven't been offered any royalties for it. ... Not gonna make a cent off of all that hard work. And then that also has a gif with an anime character eating a piece of Pocky. I also want to bring up this tweet from Noiselux, the Noiselux handle again, where she says, I don't know if people realize I've contributed to the channel's content since 2018. And in that time, I don't know if people realize the work and contributions I made to everything the channel put out. I certainly don't feel like I was acknowledged much, but it's okay. I'm gone now. Good luck. And then underneath of that, she reposts it with an addition saying, gave your buddy a whole going away heartfelt video, and I get a vague mention in a post about your production status update. 6 years really felt like they meant nothing, and I feel like some people are thinking that she's overreacting with this tweet. I don't think that's an overreaction. Her and Joan, the person she's referencing in this tweet, are very much contributed the same level and the same amount. So the fact that he isn't acknowledging her contributions at all is suspicious and deserves to be acknowledged. And I think it is unfair that she didn't get any kind of video or anything but a vague mention in his post, and it doesn't even say the truth that she was laid off and is not coming back. I don't think that's fair, and I think the fact that Thomas is lying about that and trying to cover up what happened with Bree is gross. So there is that as well that I felt I needed to share with you guys. And there is another tweet that I want to share with you all as well. This one is from Fander Twitter Confessions, and it's a screenshot of their, like, confession submission thing. And in the confession box, it says, Bree and Thomas, stop talking about these issues behind closed doors challenge. This isn't Hamilton, guys. There shouldn't be everywhere it happened, quote unquote. Please just tell us straight up, by an anonymous person. And then the Noiselux account responds, one of us signed a binding agreement and doesn't have a choice. Understanding power dynamics challenge, which I definitely think is very much important and why a lot of this doesn't come to light, especially from Bree's end. She had to sign these contracts and there's a bunch of like stuff. You know, there's a lot of things that we don't see as fans of the content that goes on. Unfortunately, so who's even to say that she will be able to get royalties or anything from the merch Thomas sold of her art? I still think she deserves to try, but yeah. So if you're wondering why this has kind of been kept under wraps on Bree's end as well, and why she's only been vague posting, I want to say this is why. So there you go. I'm just still so very deeply disappointed in Thomas. You know, and I know there's like a whole parasocial relationship. Thomas doesn't know me. I don't actually know Thomas. I definitely don't know him as a person. But it's still very disappointing to see him acting this way towards coworkers and ex-coworkers and people that he claimed were his friends. And, you know, it's very frustrating to see as well, because it's like I held you in such an esteem because I thought you handled a lot of things like maturely and like an adult, and you know, and I understand that Thomas himself deals with a lot of things that we do not see on the screen, and that there are definitely a lot of things that we didn't see going on before, and I understand that. And I'm not going to sit here and act like that doesn't affect how Thomas acts at all, but since 2018, 6 years of relationship with someone, with Joan as well? Because why did Joan leave? And I understand that on part of that, they say that they were leaving to pursue other career paths and like other creative outlets that they really wanted to do. But is that really it, or is that a cover that Thomas is trying to sell to us? You know, there's just a lot of things that should be called into question now that we should really think about. And with that in mind, I want to move on to sort of my next segment about this. But now that we know that he's not really the best type of person to work with, I think we need to take the next step into something else that I really wish Thomas would like take a step back and reflect upon. So this next section is about Thomas's blindness towards criticism, along with anything that's like even negative in his eyes that isn't necessarily negative in general. And I'm going to show you the tweets first before I get really into my thoughts. But yeah, this section is his blindness towards criticism. So this next couple of tweets, one of them comes from Caleb J. Lettuce, that is the handle, and it says, I'ma be honest, sometimes it feels like we're all just holding the Thomas Sanders fandom together with dried up glue, sticks, and unsticky tape with a crying emoji. And then Thomas responds with, boy, my For You page sometimes loves sending me tweets that bum me out. Another post, the handle is blurred out, but it says, at Thomas Sanders. Another very, very important reminder from Astrology Bot. Fuck them haters, or the Thomas Sanders critics, or whatever, that expect you to be a machine that mass-produces Sandersides and throws a hissy fit when you are in fact not, and are instead a real, live human being. To which Thomas responds, very important reminder that I don't see these critiques and am only made aware that they exist when you write posts to me about them. I know your intentions are nice, but please refrain from doing so. To which this person responds, oh man, I'm so sorry, I didn't even realize. That was totally my bad. I can delete this if you want me to. Now, I'ma just be so honest and quick. You don't need to respond to these, Thomas. These aren't something that you have to respond to. They're not important. They're not first of all, they're not really outright negative. I think someone should be allowed to post that they feel like the fandom is barely being held together. I feel like that's not a tweet that you should worry about because it's not that important. And then someone else, the second person, is trying to actively cheer Thomas up, and Thomas responds by being negative. And that feels immature. That feels like sort of a childish thing to do, in my personal opinion. I don't think he needed to respond to that in such a way. And it feels very condescending to say, very important reminder to someone who was essentially just trying to cheer you up. They weren't even pointing out a specific criticism to you. They were, in fact, actively telling you to ignore the critics, and your response was to just seem basically annoyed with this person, and I don't think that's fair to them. And I don't think you needed to respond to either of these. So these next set of tweets are gonna basically be a conversation between Thomas and this person with the handle of Ryan Desu. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. In parentheses, it's the son of Apollo. And he starts out and he says, at Thomas Sanders, I am super stoked. But I miss Sandersides. It helped my mental health. To which Thomas Sanders says, great, I'm working on that as well. Please don't negate my joy for working on projects that boost my own mental health just because you think they're taking away from other things you want. To which Ryan says, oh, I didn't mean to make it sound like I was. I deeply apologize. I was attempting to express my excitement for both at Thomas Sanders. Mind you, Thomas deleted his response after. I don't know how long after, but the fact that you deleted it at all is kind of... Anyways, Thomas responds to Ryan again and says, no worries, perhaps I misinterpreted. It's been discouraging for me in the past when people have seemed to detract from one passion project by hearkening to another, so I apologize for wrongfully thinking this was a similar situation. To which Ryan again responds, I absolutely love all of your stuff, all for different reasons. Role slang with Roman for the more easygoing D&D, Sandersides for how it helps simplify mental health issues for me, your Spidey stuff, you make me feel seen, at Thomas Sanders. And then Thomas Sanders responds, I really appreciate that, Ryan. I sincerely hope I can keep making things you enjoy. So I hope you can see why I'm frustrated with those tweets. At least I hope it's some level of obvious. The sheer idea that Thomas is responding to his own fan base, because all of those tweets, every single one, was by a fan of Thomas. He still responds defensively, as if he needs to protect himself from their comments, which again aren't inherently completely negative. I understand that they're a little bit bumming to hear. I don't blame Thomas for having the feeling of being bummed out. I just think the reaction should not be to respond to those tweets with some sort of like sassy, like quip back, like you're defeating a local Karen. I don't think that is a mature or right thing to respond with. And I think it's completely pointless because if this is how he's taking even just barely negative tweets by fans who are so desperately trying to support him and give him like positive reinforcement. There is no way that he is going to be able to handle even an ounce of genuine criticism, and he's willing to display that to his own fans. I'm so sorry, but how are you supposed to be able to be a creator? You've been a creator for even since the Vine era, and you're sitting here unable to take even the slightest ounce of criticism that isn't even a real criticism. I just think that, like, you shouldn't be sitting here trying to be a content creator and doing any of this. I think that it is damaging not only to Thomas's mental health, but damaging to his fan base. I don't know how old any of these people were. They may be as old as I am, which I'm an adult. They may be as young as when I first started watching Thomas, which was like at 13 years old. It doesn't matter what age range they are. You just shouldn't be responding to your fans this way. And I'm not sitting here acting like all of his fans were completely in the right, or that, you should sit here adding Thomas Sanders about, like, being bummed that there isn't another Sandersides episode, even if you are excited about his upcoming work. I don't think you should be adding him, obviously, but I think that it doesn't, you can't control other people's actions, Thomas, but you can control your own actions, and I think that should involve stepping away from the Twitter, from the social media, from the everything, from the spotlight, to just be like, okay, how do I feel? How do I process my feelings? And it's frustrating. It's very frustrating to see Thomas doing, honestly. And I just wish Thomas to reflect on this in the same way that I wish Thomas would just give Bree her royalties from the merch she created for him. I still think Thomas could fix this, and maybe that's like my own flaw, but I do think Thomas could fix this if he so desired. But will he? Who's to say? There's one last segment I want to get into, and it's one that means a lot to me because it's how I got into the fandom, but I think it's very important to address, especially seeing as we've laid out these other two pieces. This one is like the biggest piece I want to focus on. So the next part I want to talk about is the Sandersides Patreon, and I understand that it's just Thomas's Patreon, but when it was initially introduced, it was themed after Janice, and all of the Patreon tiers were like named after the side. I don't know if they're still named after the sides. As far as I'm aware, they still are. But there was one tier that really bugged me when he first introduced it, and as far as I'm aware, it is still a tier today, and that is the Roman tier that lets you, a fander, engage in the script writing process of the Sanderside scripts. And I just think that is really problematic to do. I don't think that is a good idea. It made me very iffy when I first heard about it, because it doesn't matter if you only write as a hobby and you only want to write fanfics, and you just, it doesn't matter if that is your only motivations for writing. If you should never, ever pay someone to write for them. There's just a lot of issues I have with that, because Thomas is essentially taking his fanders' creative works, his fanders' label, creations, putting them on his own channel and getting all of the royalties for himself, while at the same time still making money off of their Patreon tier, because as far as I'm aware, it's like one of the higher paying tiers, and I don't think that's ethical on any level, and I think that is very problematic. And I'm sure this has definitely been brought up by other people, but I definitely want to bring it up now. And if anyone who ends up watching this is a Patreon subscriber and is on the Roman tier, leave that. Don't be on that tier. Do not give Thomas that money in order to create for him. That should never have been an option, and I want to say that's just a fumble on Thomas's part, but as we've reviewed, for the other pieces of his work, it doesn't seem like that. It doesn't seem like that's just a little mishap slip-up. It seems like it's something he continues to intentionally do. He does not seem to view artists and writers in the same way that he views himself, you know? And I don't think that it's fair, and I don't think anyone should be on that tier, and I don't really know the level of involvement fanders have within that tier, but I don't think it fully matters. I think that fanders should not be able to mess or have any input on the script writing completely at all. I think it is a cowardly thing to do from Thomas's point in such a people-pleasing way that I don't think you should do it. You're trying so hard to please your audience that you're giving them full creative control over your creations, things that are supposed to be your creations. And there's also just a level of like, a lot of fanders, a lot of the fandom of Thomas is very ship-heavy. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but I think that should keep separated from the canon works. I don't think we should be trying to input our ships into the canon work itself. I don't think it's good. I don't think it makes good content. Believe it or not, I think that the ships shouldn't be in the work at all. And I think there's nothing wrong with Thomas having gently hinted at it in the beginning of the series, where he just made like light little things that were like, hee hee ha ha, I can take this and like go run with it basically. But I feel like it's more obvious now than ever that the fanders themselves have sort of taken over the script writing process, and that Joan leaving was the exact same time that Thomas created this Patreon, and specifically this tier, as if it was supposed to be a replacement for Joan. And I'm not saying that Joan should be replaced necessarily, because those are big shoes to fill, honestly, because they contributed so much, and they deserve to be praised as much as they were for all of the contributions they put into that series. But to sit here and try and replace Joan's very clearly important and like good storytelling and good writing and understanding of the characters with the fans, I don't think that's a good idea. And it clearly shows through the work, and that doesn't necessarily mean the work has 100% suffered. I still like some of the Sanderside's content that has come out in the years, but we haven't gotten a concrete episode in that time. All of the things have been either Sanders A-sides, or they've been things that don't move the plot or story forward. And I think that it's obvious that Thomas at this point is only really creating levels of Sanderside's content to placate his audience and to keep people paying him on his Patreon and watching his videos and so forth and so on. And I feel like it's gonna come out in years down the line that all of this stuff, you know, and even more that I don't even know, that the fandom doesn't even know. I feel like it's coming. And Thomas has the ability to stop that from happening by simply changing course, changing direction, being transparent and honest with his audience. It's not even about me thinking that Thomas doesn't want to create Sanderside's content. I think he kind of does. I just think the way he's going about it is completely wrong, and he shouldn't be going about it this way. But he needs to reevaluate himself and his content and the way he takes things that aren't even actual criticisms as immediate criticism. I understand that these things aren't easy, and I definitely don't expect that to be something that Thomas can do just overnight, but I think that we as fanders should be skeptical and sit here and start holding Thomas accountable for these things. That's my thoughts. That's how I feel. Obviously, people are definitely going to feel completely different than I do, and that's fine. My thoughts are out there, and there you go. Thanks for listening to my 30-minute ramble.